Hello, I am going to walk you through your brain drain for Miss Howard's Social Studies class just to make sure you fill in any gaps that you're unsure of. So we know this is the end result, and how do we get here? So we start simply with our blank piece of paper, and we know some students like to fold it because we know we need 4 boxes. So some students are going to fold it like that. Other students are just going to draw a line. This does not have to be perfect. So I'm going to just draw my little lines on top of my creases right here. Okay, most of the time we always start with our famous blob, the United States. This makes a visual of a lot of facts we should have. So we draw and yes, mine is just as ugly as most of y'all's. So I'm my blob of the U.S. So the first thing I want to do is I want to label my regions. So I have the North, the South, the Midwest, and the West. Then I'm going to think about my economies in each section. So the North, some students like to draw their economies and some like to write it. So a lot of times I'll draw my factories like this. It's important, what do they do in those factories? That's where they are manufacturing, making stuff. Then the South, we have our plantations, and then my little cotton that's on here. We go to the Midwest and we have lots of our little small farms going on. And then we have our West, where we should have gold. Well, we know I can't draw very well. Or that's mining. And then we have gold. Okay, we have our economies down. So now let's draw our land acquisition. So this is where we have look for the old man's gold. And we're going to fill that in on the map, plus where they came from. So I have my first one is Louisiana Purchase. And then we have Florida, Florida. And then we have Texas, annexation. And then we have Oregon. And then after that, we have the Mexican secession. And then the last one is Gadsden, right down here at the bottom. And it wouldn't be bad to number them on your map, just so you know. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I need to know where each of them came from. Where do we get Louisiana from? France, Florida. We got it from Spain. Sometimes we just circle that with an S. Texas, that one's an easy. Technically, we got it from Texas, but we write Mexico. Oregon, we get from Great Britain. And Mexican secession, another easy one. Mexico, Gadsden, Mexico. And you could just put an M with a circle also right here if you wanted to. And we also need to remember that these 4 come from Spanish-speaking countries. So at one time they all spoke Spanish, or were from had a lot of settlers from a Spanish-speaking country. And then we have to remember in Oregon we have 2 smiley faces. We are happy because we manifest destiny, and also it was an easy negotiation, or it was at least a negotiation that was a little bit easier than going to war or having to pay for it. Okay, so I got that. A few other things, we always want to establish that we have no slavery here and that we have slavery right here. If you want to take it further, you could label your Union and your Confederacy right there. So that is our blob to help us visualize the economies and the regions and our land acquisition. So the next thing we know we have is 3 T-charts and 3 triangles. So before I do anything, I'm just going to go ahead and draw them because I know they're there. Keep myself organized. Okay, so everything on here is because it's very highly tested, and we know this is going to help us answer the question. It's not just some random fact, it's actually going to be something that guides us to answer the question. So we have our famous Fed and anti-Fed T-chart. 3 F's, 4 A's. So we have to be able to analyze an argument and say, well, what would a Federalist say? Or which one of these would be from a Federalist or an anti-Federalist? So we have for the Constitution. So that means the side is against the Constitution. This is for a strong federal government. So that means this side is against strong Fed Gov. And they are for weaker state governments. And so we know an anti-Fed, they are against a weak state government. They want the states to be in charge, have the kids in charge. They are terrified of this new constitution, that they are surrendering way too much power to the federal government because they're used to having the states in charge and they liked it even though it didn't work. And their big one is they argued for a what? Bill of Rights. And we know the Federalists argued really against that. They said, we don't really need it. It's not needed. We did good enough with the way we wrote the Constitution. But we know to get these anti-Federalists to sign their name on the Constitution, the Federalists had to negotiate, give them their Bill of Rights. Okay, our next one is, it'll get a little tight here, is our cause and effect of the Industrial Revolution. So we have Milt. I'm going to kind of squeeze this in. Cures. So mint cures bad breath, mint cures sinuses, add an L in the middle. So this would be the causes. It's kind of the same thing you need to start a business. So we have money, ideas, labor, natural resources, and transportation. Labor comes a lot from our immigrants that come. We have a lot of the Chinese immigrants, a lot of German and Irish immigrants. That's a big part of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so let's go to the important side, which is the effects. The first one, cheaper. Now, I haven't been able to design a better word for cheaper. We talked about this already, but it doesn't say cheaper. It won't say that on the STAAR test. It's going to say less expensive or prices decrease. The next one is urbanization. We know because of the factories, people move to cities. You don't drive 6 hours to work and 6 hours home. You move to the city. So wherever there's a factory, that caused urbanization. And then rapid. That's the word that you're going to see on the STAAR test. It's going to use that word. It's not going to use the word quicker. It's not going to use the word faster. Neither of those words have been on the STAAR test. You look for the word rapid. And also, if you speak Spanish, you know you can say in the fancier way how we say rapid in Spanish. It's pretty close. And then the next super important word is efficient. Things are just easier. I talked about this a lot when I talk about how the chip bag is a lot more efficient to pick it up with a vacuum than it would be to pick it up by hand if it's all crushed into the carpet. And then the last major effect is slavery, and we know it increases dramatically, unfortunately, because of some of the new inventions, especially the cotton gin. So the effects are the most important part. You're going to see tons of questions on these. I told you don't look for keywords. Sometimes that can be keywords are in the wrong answer, so you really have to analyze. But on the Industrial Revolution, you do have permission to look. If you see efficient or rapid, or something about slavery increase, put a star by that and give that a lot of thought. Our last one, we have no cute way, but it's so heavily tested, so it made it to our T-charts. It's the cause and effect of the Mexican-American War. So all I know to do is do 1, 2, 3 on both sides. And know, okay, so what are the 3 causes? It's going to be Texas annexation, the border dispute, and manifest destiny. Those are our three causes. And then our effects, well, I can kind of trace some of these across. So the border dispute, well, what was the effect of that? The Rio Grande becomes the border. Manifest destiny, what's the effect of that? We get the Mexican secession, a massive chunk of land. And then the last thing is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So those are just three of your heavily tested things on our STAAR test, and those are some ways to remember their importance. So we know we have to have those T-charts on there, and we will definitely use them. It'll keep us organized on guide us towards the correct answer. Then we have our three triangles. Our most famous triangle, and it works every single time, is our Marbury versus Madison triangle, or it has John Marshall in the middle. Remember, your points can be anything. They can be anywhere, so it doesn't matter where I put these. So I'm going to put Marbury versus Madison. We have JR and UC. So that's for Marbury versus Madison, judicial review, and unconstitutional or constitutional. So we know if you get a question on Marbury versus Madison, your answer will have either unconstitutional or constitutional in it, or judicial review. If you get a question about judicial review, your answer is going to talk about the constitutionality, whether it's constitutional or unconstitutional, or it talks about Marbury versus Madison. It constantly, one connects to the other, and it works every single time. Amazing trick to keep us on track and always get those right. It makes those questions super easy. And who got famous from this little triangle? John Marshall, because he was the Supreme Court Justice. Our next one, everyone likes this, TJ and Alex. They are the reason today we have political parties, because they hated each other. George Washington said don't have political parties, but he chose two guys who hated each other. And what did they fight over? The economy and the national bank. We know George Washington said we are young, dumb, and broke. How are you going to fix it, Alex? And he said, I'm going to create a national bank. This is all the other, among other things, help the economy. And TJ basically said, you're stupid. I hate you. I don't like any of your ideas. So again, we can use these when it asks us about something about political parties. We can use these to connect. It will help you every single time. You will use the middle, the fellas who created it, a lot more than you'll use John Marshall. And then our last one is the nullification crisis, tested every year. And we know that this is a federal versus state issue. So it's the feds going against the states. It's when the states wanted to void a law. But we have a lot more words for void. We could say override, overrule, annul, nullify. These are all synonyms for void. It all goes together. So you have to know that is when a state says, yeah, no, that law's stupid. I ain't following it. What you gonna do? So anytime we're dealing with a fed and state, we know this is a problem, an issue of federalism. Who has the power to do what? The first time this crisis happened was, of course, with Jackson. Okay, so those are our three T-charts and three triangles to help us on the test, guide us, that we'd actually use in the process of answering our question. Okay, the next one, let's move to our 1 through 15 of our amendments. 3. I'm just going to number them just like you would. 13, 14, and 15. We are allowed to cross out what? 7 and 11, like the gas station. So as I go through here, I'll put the certain things to help me remember. I know that the wraps, but you have to know what each one is. Religion, assembly, petition, press, and speech. You have to know what petition is and what press is. Remember, if I press down on my paper, I'm writing. So press is about writing. Petition is going to be about trying to be able to change stuff, getting in, being able to get in a group and protest. It goes a lot along with assembly. But you are allowed to ask for change, to petition the government for change. Okay, let's go to the second one. Some people put different things. Some people draw a little gun. Some people write arms. Some people write guns. Whatever helps you remember it. 3 is quarter soldiers, that we do not have to do that. If I could spell soldiers right, that'd be great. I spelled it wrong again. Sorry about that. So let me write this neater. There you go. Okay, 4, you have to have a warrant to search and see. Some people just write S and S, but whatever you do to help you remember it, you do you. You need a warrant for that. Number 5, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do will or can be used against you in the court of law. Number 6, trial by jury. And a speedy trial at that. And we have hand signals to help us remember that for all of these. Number 8, I like to write Q for cruel, unusual, and excessive fines. You're protected against all of those. 9 is that you have other rights. And 10, our famous one that's so argued about, is federalism. 12, we forget about this one a lot. I wouldn't stress over this, but this is where Congress elects the president if a president doesn't reach that magic number of electoral votes. And then we have 13, 14, and 15. Free citizens vote. This abolishes slavery right here. 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. This is where all kind of 2 parts to this. So all African Americans are citizens and all laws apply to everyone. So you cannot just have a law that applies to certain people in America. You make a law that applies to all citizens. And then all African American men can vote. Okay, and then we have our FP rocks right here. FP rocks. If you tell me F is for federalism, you're going to fail. That's like saying A is for apple. That doesn't help us on a test at all. We need the formula. So we know that is federal plus state. I need that together. If I ask for jelly toast and you give me plain toast, I am missing the jelly. You cannot just talk about the federal government. It literally, in a sentence from the Constitution, has to say state. So federal and state. And we know another word for federal is national, central, United States. And a lot of times, instead of federal, it says U.S. instead, because that's how the 10th Amendment's written for federalism. Oh, we love the P because it's just people, easy. I literally look for that in the sentence. Republicanism, easy, elect or choose. It's not going to use the word vote in the Constitution. It doesn't. It says elect or choose or chosen. We know C, that we need to have at least 2 branches. And this separation of powers, we have 1 branch. And how do we work these 2? We have to go to our little tree. You can draw a tree or a chart, whatever you want. I'll go ahead and do it in a chart form. JEL. I need to know what groups are in each branch. So here I have the Supreme Court and the judges. Executive, I have the pres, vice pres, and his cabinet. And the legislative, I have Congress, the House of Representatives, and I have my Senate. So if I'm given a question from the Constitution, I know that I am looking for if I am jumping from one branch to the other. So if my sentence has a word, I've got to look for my leaves. We talk about these as being the leaves on the branches. So if I see the word Congress and House of Reps, well, I've stayed on one branch, so I'm separation of powers. But if I see the word Congress, if I see that group and President, I'm going to circle Congress, put my L, circle President, put my E. Have I jumped from one branch to the other? then I have 2 branches and I'm checks and balances. That works for us every single time, that strategy. If that's something you're unsure of, that is a quick, easy 5-10 minute tutorial and we can get you mastering that quickly. Okay, the last box. We have 3 bullet points and we say NUM, M-U-M. This one is our Northwest Ordinance, and that is territory to state. We can say this is how you admit new states, how a territory becomes to govern itself as a state. There's a lot of different words to put that. Unalien. If I unalien you, if I make you an unalien, then you are human. So we thought all unalienable rights should be given to every human, every person born. And those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then we have our MCK, and that is slavery debate with a new state. We know that Missouri Compromise, Compromise of 1850, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act all had to do with every time we added a new state, there was drama surrounding that, especially with the Compromise of 1850 or California Compromise of 1850, where we added the Fugitive Slave Law. Horrible, horrible law. And then the last thing you're going to do is draw your little bubble map, and you write self-gov, rep-gov, and this is your number 1 tested thing in the colonial era, probably second most tested thing on the whole STAAR test. So we draw, we have our little pictures that we draw with it. We can just do it like that. See, it doesn't have to be beautiful. So we have our house, and this is the Virginia House of Burgesses. And we have our little people in here. And we put leg reps. Are they working out? No, they are not. These are legislators, legislative, law, same thing, lawmakers, and they're representatives, and they're here. This is our first example of representative government in the United States. So it became very famous for, oh my God, look how cute they are. They're little legislators, and they are assembling, and they are making laws. Look at this. This is so adorable. What a great example of representative government. And then our other one we had was the Mayflower Compact. See, and mine's sloppy, and it's more about the content, not the prettiness. But some of you make y'all's very fancy, and that's awesome. Mayflower Compact, our best example of self-gov. This is where they decided to pick their rules. Get it? Mayflower Compact. They get to pick their rules. Great example of self-government. They pick their leaders. Sometimes we put leaders here, people here. People were picking the leaders. They were picking the rules. They were governing themselves. And the last one we have is the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. And then we just have FC for first. Constitution. So when we want to know, well, why do we learn this? Well, this is, again, this wrote down how they would govern themselves and represent themselves. All the rules for it, like, oh, how adorable. The Fundamental Orders of Connecticut was the first constitution and a fabulous example of representative and self-government. And then why at all did the colonies start governing themselves and then lead towards a representative government? It is all because, simple answer, the distance from Great Britain. Too darn far away. So figure out your own rules and the way you want to do things, because Great Britain is so far away. Of course, they didn't take your government very seriously. We'll have to go to war for that. So this right here completes your brain drain. It is not everything that you have learned, but it is the most important things. You have a 90 to 100% chance of these items being on your test, which is why they are on your brain drain. If you feel that you are, this was very simple for you, students who have glided through this the whole year, we're also challenged to do the advanced version. We use some of these throughout the year on our test. I definitely recommend that all students work towards, they know their little 1812 boat. This one is fabulous to add to your brain drain along with your reform. Dorothea Dix, prison and mental health reform. The women's symbol with Seneca Falls, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony. And then our jug of alcohol with a cross that also is a T because it's a Christian women's group that wanted to ban alcohol consumption and sales, and that's also called temperance. So I really, really stress also working towards adding these on there. Okay, that concludes the practice of your brain drain. Practice this, and the most important thing is when you open up that test and you see all those wrong answers and those things to trick you, remember, this is your anchor. These are the facts. You know what the facts are, and they're right here. Let this be your anchor and your support to remind you what those facts are. And that is the end of practicing your brain drain.